Hey there, welcome to the Lily Knits YouTube channel. My name is Alnar and I'm the creator behind Lily Knits Knitting and Crochet. In this video, I'm going to show you how I change colors in stranded knitting. I'll demonstrate my technique using the Buffalo Plaid Knit Toque pattern that you can find on the Lily Knits website. I've included a link in the description of this video. Before we get started, I'd like to ask that if you enjoy my free patterns and tutorials, that you consider supporting me and the Lily Knits website by visiting the Lily Knits Ravelry or Etsy stores and purchasing one of my for sale patterns. When you purchase a pattern, you will be emailed an easy-to-read, beautifully formatted, printable PDF file. Every pattern that I create is designed to be fun and easy to follow. By purchasing one of my patterns, you enable me to continue to provide inspiration and value to you guys through my free patterns and tips on the website. As I mentioned earlier, this tutorial uses the Buffalo Plaid Knit Hat pattern that I've posted for free on my website. It's a great idea to take a look through the pattern, especially the color chart, before you begin. Okay, so I've knit the brim of my hat and the first 10 stitches in gray for the color work round. And now I need to start adding color. So what I do is I just drop the gray yarn and I add in the red, just like how I would normally add a piece of yarn. So this is how I hold my yarn when I'm knitting. I knit continental style, so I just wrap it around my index finger and my pinky, and then I just start knitting with it. So I'm going to knit one stitch like so, and then I'm ready to add the gray again. So I had dropped it to add the red yarn, but now I want to wrap it around my fingers as well, so that I have both yarns wrapped around my fingers while I'm knitting, so that it's easy to just keep switching between colors. So what I do is the yarn on my left hand, on the left hand side, I wrap it around my index finger and pinky, and I just keep it below my knuckle. And then the yarn that's on the right hand side, I wrap it around my index finger and middle finger, and that just keeps it in place so that it doesn't slide around too close to the red yarn, and keeps them nice and separate so that it's easy to switch between the two. And then I just wrap it again around my pinky like so. So you can see how I have them wrapped. And then I'm ready to start knitting again with the gray. So I just pick up where I was, and instead of knitting with the red, I knit one stitch with the gray, like so. And then I can just pull this red one tight. And you can just leave this. When I'm done, I just go back and then I just like tighten a knot in the back and weave it in. It's not going to go anywhere, so it's totally fine just to leave the tail hanging for the new piece of yarn that you've added. So now that we have both yarns added and we have them held nicely in our left hand, because I knit continental style, if you throw your yarn, I'm not sure how it's done, but I'm sure there are a lot of videos out there. This is just how I do it. So I'm just going to show you again how I switch between the colors for the next 8 stitches. So I do a red stitch, and then a gray stitch, and then a red stitch, and then a gray stitch. And you can see that the way that I keep them separate is I always make sure that the way I'm holding it, that the red yarn is below my knuckle and the gray yarn is above my knuckle. And it just takes some practice, but once you get the hang of it, you'll be able to do it no problem. At first, your grip might, you might need to keep adjusting your grip on the yarn, but it's not so bad. After you do it a few times, you get a method going, and it's pretty intuitive. So I'm just going to finish off these 10 stitches. So red, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So there's my colored stitches, and this is what it looks like on the back. So now I'm going to have to knit 10 stitches in gray again. What I do when I have to knit quite a few stitches in one color, I don't want a really long float at the back of my work. And a float is just when like you leave the yarn just hanging behind. It's not good because it can get caught on things and it kind of makes your work look a little tight or loose in certain spots. So just to keep an even gauge and you know, have not to have a really long float. You want to trap the float. So I'm going to show you how I trap the float. So I'm going to knit like a few stitches, maybe 3 in gray. And now I want to trap this float that's behind the stitches so that it doesn't get too long. So the way that I do it is I insert my needle into my stitch. I put it under my yarn that I'm trying to trap, and then I just knit the stitch like so. And so you can see they're a little twisted here. That's fine. You just leave it like that and you just continue to knit the next stitch how you normally would, and it goes back to how it was. And then if you look behind your work, you can see you've trapped your float. So it's right there, and then the trap is right there. I suggest trapping your float every 3 or 4 stitches. You don't need to do it any less than that. It's not necessary. So I've knit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 already. So I'm going to knit until I've done 10. So there's 3 more. And then I'm going to trap my float again. So again, I'll show you how I trapped it. So I insert my yarn into my stitch. I put my needle under this red yarn, and then I just knit with the gray yarn again, like so, and it's trapped. And then I knit another stitch with gray. So let's see how many I've done now. So that's the last of that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then one more is 10. So now we want to go back to the checkered pattern we had down here. So I'm gonna knit with the red and the gray interchangeably again. So I do a red and a gray and a red and a gray, and as you can see, I just keep going. Even I have to sometimes like readjust my yarns if they're getting too loose, so I just rewrap them like so and just make them tight, and then I just keep going. Until I have 10 stitches in the alternating colors. And so I work this way all the way around the hat. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And so now I want to knit my 10 gray stitches again while trapping the float. So I'll show you one more time. So I knit 1, 2, 3, and on the 4th one, I move my needle underneath the red and around the gray to knit it. And then I just knit the next gray stitch normally. Sometimes this is a little loose, so I just push it down with my thumb just to make it easier. And that's pretty much it. You just keep knitting and trapping your floats when you need to, and alternating colors, and the back will look nice and pretty. One thing to keep in mind is you want to make sure your floats aren't too tight. So if you feel like you knit tight, just check the back after you trap a float, and if it's too loose, just pull it a little, because you don't want you don't want the front of the hat to look tight where the floats are trapped if they're too tight. So just make sure that they're nice and loose, and it'll look beautiful. I've knit a few rounds and you can see the pattern coming together. The color work is developing beautifully, and I just wanted to point out that I've switched which yarn I'm holding in my left and which yarn I'm holding in my right side. So the reason for this is for the first 10 rounds of the hat, I had the gray color most predominant, so that means that I used gray more. And so I really wanted the red to pop. So whatever yarn in general, when you're working in color work that is on your left-hand side, the stitches for that yarn will be slightly larger than the stitches on the right-hand side. So you can see the reds are just slightly bigger. And I think that just makes it pop more, and it's also more consistent so that you consistently have the same yarn on the same side. So the stitches consistently look bigger for one color than the other. So when I switched to having the red more predominant for rows 11 to 20, I had to swap which yarn was on the right and which one was on the left. So now I have my gray yarn on my left side and my red yarn on the right side, so that my gray stitches will be slightly bigger than my red stitches. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If so, please subscribe to the Lily Knits YouTube channel and give the video a thumbs up. And don't forget that you can find this free pattern on the Lily Knits website. If you love the pattern and would like to purchase the printable PDF file, you can do so through the website or my Ravelry or Etsy stores. The PDF file is beautifully formatted and a great way to keep the pattern for your own records. Purchasing the PDF file also helps to support me to continue to provide you with free videos, tutorials, and patterns going forward.